It's the 15th of June. I'm on chemo again. It's almost finished. This is day 3. That's the chemo in there, and basically when I first get this bottle, that's after a day of chemo at the hospital, that balloon thing in there is completely filling up the whole bottle. It gradually releases the poison into my blood. So I think it's like the 20th time to have chemotherapy, something like that. So a little bit of an update. Kind of had potentially bad news. Every month I have I have a blood test every 2 weeks for chemo. But every month I'm tested for things called tumour markers. So there are all these different tumour markers that can, to some extent, measure what cancer is doing. So for my type of cancer, colon cancer, there's 2 tumour markers that are commonly used. One is called CEA, and one is called CA19-9. And when my cancer was first discovered, the tumour markers were very, very high. And then the surgery, the chemo, and possibly the immunotherapy, kind of shrinking the tumours and maybe attacking the cancer as well. And the tumour markers were kind of down into safe limits, but recently they've gone up, which may suggest that tumours are growing or even that new tumours are formed, so it's kind of a bad thing. And recently I've had to miss chemo a few times. First of all, I was going to miss it because I missed it a few times because I was going to have some exploratory surgery, which I didn't end up having, and then had to miss it recently because I got some necrosis in my toe, which basically meant part of my toe died, and can't really heal because of the chemo. That's now it's starting to improve a bit. And last week I managed to put on shoes for the first time in a couple of months, which is fantastic. My foot still hurts quite a bit, and the nail is about to come off my big toe, which is unpleasant. But anyway, so yeah, the tumour markers thing is kind of scary. But the tests are not very sensitive. There can be other reasons why your tumour marker levels are elevated. But next week on Tuesday, I should be having a CT scan. I don't have an appointment, but my oncologist has some secret technique for getting me a CT scan quickly. So he just said go and see him on Tuesday, and he'll put me through the secret system to get me a reservation on the day. But I won't be able to see him again until the following week, and I'm due to have chemo anyway, so I won't have the CT results for another week. Usually in Japan, you have the CT scan and just go and see the oncologist afterwards, and they just look at the scan with you, and then you get the official report a few days later from the radiographer. So kind of expecting the CT scan may show tumours growing, or even new tumours, which would be really bad. But possibly. We've been having a lot of immunotherapy recently, which may have kept the tumour static. We'll see. So that's the update, really. There's been kind of potentially big news in the world of cancer treatment, which is that last month in the US, the government agency that approves medicines, which is called the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, they approved a medicine called Keytruda, And Keytruda is already approved, I think, maybe last year for, there's a medicine, I think, for a type of lung cancer, maybe a type of skin cancer as well. And it's a type of immunotherapy. It's one that has quite severe, potentially quite severe side effects in a small number of people. And also it's an immunotherapy that only seems to be effective for about 5% of people. But last month, the FDA approved it for every cancer in adults if the patient has a certain genetic thing called microsatellite instability high, MSI high, and about 4 or 5% of cancer patients seem to have this, although I've heard researchers claim that for people with my type of cancer, colon cancer, that it could be even up to 15-20% of people have it. But the reason it's so significant, and it's really, we always hear all this crap about cancer breakthroughs and stuff never happens. But this could be seriously significant because it's the first time in the history that the Food and Drug Administration have approved a cancer treatment for a specific gene. In the past, they always approved the cancer treatment for a type of part of the body. So they say, this is for lung cancer, this is for colon cancer, this is for liver cancer. But for quite a few years now, immunotherapists particularly have been saying that's not the right way to think about cancer because instead of thinking that there are a couple of hundred types of cancer starting in different parts of the body, much more accurate to think of there's tens of thousands of cancers linked to specific genes. So that's why this approval is very, very significant. Another thing is the speed of the approval. So the FDA have a fast-track approval process, and I think that's for basically any medicine that helps with terminal disease or any medicine where there's currently not an effective medicine available for that condition. And the FDA have said that they're going to try and give a yes and no answer after 6 months. So basically, the drug company will apply for the approval and they'll get a yes or no 6 months later instead of, a couple of years later. So this really could be a significant cancer breakthrough. Now, a few months ago, about like 3 months ago, I was talking to one of my immunotherapists about Keytruda and that family of immunotherapy medicines called checkpoint inhibitors. So these are basically the ones that they tell the cancer cells to die. Every cell should have a message telling it to die called PD1, PD2. So these are the program death, I guess they're genes it's referring to. But cancer cells are good at suppressing this kind of thing. So they basically are able to ignore the message or stop the message being generated that tells the cell to die. The checkpoint inhibitors stop that suppression of the program death receptor, whatever it's called. And when I was asking about them, at that time, the medicines Keytruda hadn't been approved for colon cancer. But the immunotherapist said, well, there will be hopefully a whole family of these drugs in about 2 years' time. And he said, sadly, that's definitely not going to be in time for you. Now, that was a few months ago, and that was before this ruling and this approval. I haven't had the genetic test to see if I can have this medicine or not, and the odds are against it because only about 5 to possibly 15% of patients have microsatellite instability high, although there are some technical reasons why that might not completely be the case. So one thing is that maybe the genetic testing is not very good because you wouldn't expect to have that mutation throughout the whole cancer. So maybe they're not taking enough samples, not big enough samples, and also it may be possible to induce the mutation in the tumour and then treat it. So this seems to happen with if someone's got colon cancer that's spread to the liver, and then they have, instead of the surgery on the colon, they have the liver treated first. That seems to induce a response in the colon cancer to this these checkpoint inhibitors, which is kind of amazing. So anyway, but the immunotherapist said, you're obviously not going to live for 2 years, so these medicines are not going to get you in time. However, potentially things have changed a lot. I'm still obviously not looking at living another 2 years, but if the cancers are still stable, it might be another few months, might be 4, 5, 6 months, which might be enough for me to get some of these drugs when they're maybe not approved, but kind of where they've just done the safety test first. Because with cancer drugs, you do, well, I think with all drugs, you have 3 phases of trials, and the first one is just testing with healthy people, is the drug safe? I think the second one is, does it work better than the current medicine? And then maybe third one is getting the exact dose, I think, and that kind of thing. But I may be able to get some of these drugs, which would be incredible, because that just wasn't looking like a possibility a few months ago. So that's what's happening, really. So I'll have some more news really in a couple of weeks' time, a week and a half's time, when I get the result of the CT scan. And if the CT scan result shows that the tumours haven't got bigger, then I'll see if I can get a PET scan, which will show how active the tumours are. So we'll see. Thanks a lot for listening. If you can share my donation page on Facebook or Twitter, or whatever, that's super helpful, because no donations have come in for a week or so, and I need more money to pay for medical treatment. My donation page is at matthewdons.org. That's MATTHEWDONS.org. Thanks a lot.